All right. Looks like we've got the live stream up and running. I see a number there on the icons. As you know, I usually have to wait a few seconds to make sure that this is going to go up, and it looks like it is. I'm not going to make this long, but I wanted to do a follow up on a couple of things that I've mentioned over the last little while. One, not a whole lot, but I'm going to now. Hello, everyone, as you come in. Yeah, today is the 14th of April, 2023. And I've said it for a long time that we have a corrupt, even criminal, lawless government, primarily at the federal level, but really at all levels. And I think all of you know how I've talked about this before. With all of the leaks, all the mishandling of classified material from and I mentioned this the other day, Hillary Clinton's server and the emails that had to do with that, and of course the death of Seth Rich, which has never been solved because the FBI knows it can't solve it without pointing fingers at the very people that they're trying to protect. And that goes with so many things that are going on right now. For instance, the Biden laptop, as I've mentioned, and the Twitter files about the suppression of free speech. Actually, the calls for the suppression of free speech by those who have taken an oath to defend our rights, along with the Second Amendment as well. People that attack those rights should be. Unfortunately, the Constitution doesn't have the teeth for it, but those people should be investigated and even charged with attempting to violate people's rights under the United States Code. I think it's Title 18. But of course, nothing ever happens on that because the enforcement establishment, primarily at the federal level, but also at the state and local, so many of them have gone to this situation where the government can do no wrong, and that even if they violate people's rights and very lives and property, they're not going to be investigated. So we have the Hillary Clinton situation, we have the Biden situation, lots on the Biden situation where a lot of classified documents have shown up in his property. I guess Mike Pence, same thing. And I would suspect that this is probably pretty common across the board. And yet, and of course, there was the Trump situation as well. Uh, my point in mentioning all of this, of course, is the recent leak of the Pentagon documents that we've been talking about for the last few days. And unfortunately, this has taken front seat on, of course, this is the distraction, right? Talk about the leaker like they did with the Hillary Clinton emails. Get upset that she was hacked rather than the criminal behavior that she engaged in. And we're seeing the same thing here now. The criminal behavior of the Biden administration, the Department of Defense, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of talking about that, the mainstream media and even the talking points of the White House and of course the Department of Defense, et cetera, is about this horrible leaker and that we have to close up the social uh, media outlets, do more to surveil them. Not correct our lies and our criminality. Oh, no, 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 no. Not go after the criminals in government that these leaks have exposed, but shut down the American people again. Same thing with the Second Amendment, right? Whenever there's one of these shootings, we're going to take guns away from the 99.9% of the people who use them to protect themselves. And we're going to base that action on the 0.1% or whatever it is of the criminal activity. When those types of things happen, you're under a terrorist, tyrannical regime. So, what my point is on this video is that it shouldn't surprise us that with the evidence that these documents have shown of the Biden administration, et cetera, having done criminal behavior. Sending, just one example, I'm not going to go through it all. One example, sending troops to Ukraine, boots on the ground. And I'm going to bring that into something else here in just a minute. Uh, Lying to the American people, lying under oath in front of the Congress, Austin and Milley, but Milley's done that anyway. He's even a treasonous bastard because he called up his Chinese counterpart when he was working for Trump. Right? Remember that? I'm not going to go into the details, but there you go. Nothing ever happened to him. Nothing ever happened to Lieutenant Colonel, retired now, Vindman, for releasing classified information. But they go after this little airman. And like I said, I think the guy's been set up. A lot of people are arguing, including intelligence people, that this guy would not have had, even if he had a TSSCI, which is really odd. But if he did, because how long it takes to process that and how they have to do your background and all that, and the guy's International Guard, something's really wrong there, as Colonel Schaefer has pointed out, and many other people. But regardless, his access would still be need to know. And at the level that he was working, he might get tactical information, just like Private Manning did in the Iraq situation, if you know about that, and his feeding that information to Assange. He might have access to tactical information, but this was high-level official briefing type materials to high-level officials that would not have been sent out where this airman could have gotten it. So there's somebody else behind this and behind this airman, whether he realizes it or not. As I've said, there's more to this than meets the eye. It's probably somebody very high up that's trying to stop this nonsense at the White House level. I'm not saying they're in the White House that are trying to stop it, but somebody's trying to stop it. And I don't really understand this. Some of the intelligence and military people have commented on this, are saying that this is to provide Biden with a soft landing for the debacle that's about ready to occur in Ukraine. I don't see that. I'm sorry. I don't think that's what this is at all. Maybe they have to say that because of whatever situation they're in that I'm not. But at any rate, so all of this criminal activity that's been exposed on these documents, and there's no one going after the perpetrators of those crimes. Yes, they'd have to be investigated and all that, but none of that, at least not on the surface, is going on, and you can bet that nothing is happening. We're a lawless, failed state. We're on the road to absolute tyranny. Actually, we're already there. And this is very, very bad for everyone. What these documents do for Russia is prove that the United States is at war with Russia. We haven't got our requirement of a declaration of war from Congress, but these documents prove that the United States considers itself and is acting as such, that it is at war with Russia. Do you realize what this means? Another situation. Many of you know that I stay in touch with a French-Canadian journalist by the name of Guy Bouillon. Guy considers me a colleague, and I'm not even in his league. It's very kind of him to say that I am, but I'm not in his league. Maybe from a different perspective, but certainly not a journalistic one like he has. But Guy's broken a lot of stories. He's talked about a lot of things. A lot of you who follow me know that he's done some stories that have included me in one way or another. And he sends me material every once in a while and lets me know what's going on. Well, if you all remember, the Russian Federation started an investigation of the bioweapons labs in that European country that we're involved with right now to try to overthrow Russia. And actually, what we're doing is emptying Ukraine of white Christians. That's actually what we're doing. And I've talked about that. That gets people riled up, but it's so obvious. But you all should know that first of all, the Russian Federation, the Ministry of Defense of Russia started investigation on these many labs in Ukraine that are U.S. backed, and the U.S. finally has admitted that we're there, but they say we're just for just for study purposes. Yeah. Well, because of the Russian invasion, they were able to get a hold of a lot of material, a lot of evidence, even though much of it was destroyed by the fleeing, the people fleeing those areas. But at any rate, a report was issued by the Ministry of Defense of Russia, and on top of that, the Duma, the Russian parliament, has now issued its final report on the situation. And Guy Bouillon sent it to me. And he took the trouble to translate it into English, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure it was probably a computer type of translation, because I can see some things in it that lead that. So there are some things there you have to be careful of. But by and large, I got a very good understanding of what's going on here. And the evidence against the United States is overwhelming. And they were using the Ukrainian people. I'll probably get thrown off YouTube for saying this. According to the Russian Federation, the Duma, and the Ministry of Defense, the United States was using Ukraine to test their biological weapons to see if they would affect Russian genetics. People say, oh, no, they wouldn't do that. Well, let me remind you that we had the Tuskegee experiments, right? If you know about that, giving the black men syphilis there in the South back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. We had the troops that were exposed and the American people to nuclear fallout with the tests, the atomic tests in Nevada and elsewhere. And we've had many examples of the government doing biological warfare experiments using supposedly inert chemicals, one of which happened in San Francisco, I believe, a few years back, and some people got sick. Well, they do this all right. They certainly do. And then, of course, we have the extant treatment that's been going on for the last two and a half years. That is, in essence, a gigantic experiment on, they say, they admit now, of course, gene therapy, but in fact, it can also be used quite easily to identify specific ranges of individuals and used as a weapon. I'll probably get thrown off YouTube for this, but frankly, I'm getting so tired of this stuff. It's just unbelievable. I understand Twitter is coming out with a subscription service that'll be a lot like YouTube. I don't know if I want to pay for this stuff. There's some reasons why I don't want to pay for it. Maybe that's an option. I don't know. But Rumble is probably going to go away too. If Twitter does this, all these other platforms, including YouTube, will be washed up. So maybe it doesn't matter if they take me down at this point. I think I told you the other day I got another notice that they took down another one of my videos, and it was about another criticism of the FBI. They don't like me doing that. Anyway, getting back on this. So why am I bringing this up about this report? Well, put two and two together. They have proof that the Russians do, plus all the other things that have been said, the sending of weapons, the United States sending weapons there, using other countries to get involved to send all of that, basically conspiring with other nations to send weapons to Ukraine to fight Russians. The Russians already knew that. And then they found out what was really going on in these labs in Ukraine. And now they put out a report on that, showing that the intent was to use these things against the Russians eventually by testing on the Ukrainians who have a similar genetic background. Why not post a Rumble also? No, I'm not going to bother with that. I've long said that if they take me down off here permanently, it's meant to be. And I'm not going to spread myself thin like that. I mean, you know, I'm just not going to do it, okay? But at least not right now. At least not right now. Rumble's going to be in danger if Elon Musk does this on Twitter. Twitter will outperform Rumble, and all those will go away. So I'm just going to wait. Parler, same thing. Anyway, you're getting me off subject. So they have this information that the Duma has just put out on a comprehensive report on what the United States was doing with these labs in Ukraine and how they were going to employ that against Russia. Number one. And it's almost a 200-page report. It took me hours to get through it. It's not real technical, thank goodness. But I do have a background in biochemical warfare as an officer in the Army. I was a nuclear chemical accident incident control officer, which also took in biological warfare to some extent. So I understand a lot of the things that are being said in there, and it's pretty obvious what the intent of the United States was in doing this and using the poor Ukrainian people to test it. Sort of like Netanyahu using the Israeli people to test those big farm, read between the lines, items that Israel was forcing everybody to take. Netanyahu's such a nice guy. He really cares about his people, doesn't he? So that's the first thing. And they've been working on that now for about 2 years, a little over 2 years. They put out a report last March 2022. I think it was right in there. It may have been May 2022. And now they have the final report from the Duma in 2023. Now this leak comes out from the Pentagon, again, which this airman, I don't know how the hell he got it. Even if he has a TSSCI, because there's still a need to know, number one. Number two, how did somebody in a tactical area, what would be considered a tactical type of operational headquarters, get information that was supposed to be used for briefing the joint staff in the Pentagon and the White House? Well, there's been a lot of talk about this. There's got to be another actor, whether it's somebody that's a patriot and is trying to get this stuff out and use this poor airman as a patsy, or if it's some type of an operation, an info op inside the White House for whatever purpose. And as crazy as those people are in the White House, I wouldn't doubt that the way they were thinking was just real off the wall crazy, because I think it's going to do the opposite. Yeah, the story doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And I said that right off the bat. So again, even if he had the clearance, he would not have had the access. So there's a third party involved somewhere. Now, the other side of this, in conjunction with this report put out by the MOD and the Duma on the labs and those weapons, the fact that the United States even considers it a proxy war for the United States, even though they say they're not directly confronting Russia. They said that, right? But they've been using all these other people, including Ukraine, to fight Russia and providing Ukraine with the weapons and even personnel to do it. And now this leak comes out showing that they've all lied in the DOD and in the White House and in the State Department. That in fact, they have been waging war on Russia without the requirement under the Constitution, like who obeys the Constitution anymore, the goddamn Congress won't even hold the executive branch accountable, or anybody else for that matter, not even their own people, because they're all getting kickbacks from this at the expense of lives, limbs, blood, and treasure of the little people, including you. Nobody's going to do anything about it because they're all cowards and on the take. But now Russia has even more information to prove that the United States is cogently, deliberately at war with Russia. Do you realize where that puts us? No, I'm not going to shave. I told you I'm doing this for another reason. It'll be on for at least another couple weeks, another week. I'll just tell you, I'm an extra in something, okay? That's all I'm going to say, okay? That's all I'm going to say. All right? I think I look pretty bad in the part that I'm playing. I think it makes me look pretty bad, and I can be a mean-ass bastard. Yeah, that young man's a fall guy. He may have thought he was doing the right thing. I don't know what the investigation is going to show up, but I can't imagine that the third party is going to be uncovered on this, because he probably doesn't know, number one. Number two, that's just not going to happen. So where this puts us right now is that Russia could do a first strike. Do you realize that? I'm not saying they will. I have said that Russia is probably not involved in any of the sabotage that's going on in the United States right now on our food processing centers, our transportation systems, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's people in D.C. that are doing that to take down the American people. And you see, that's the catch-22 that we're in, the American people. Because the criminals, the tyrants that are running this, to them, if we're destroyed by Russian nuclear weapons, or by them, meaning the people in D.C., destroying our food supply and starving us to death, or making us sick and reducing our population, it's okay with them either way, so they really don't care. Do you understand? Yeah, Russia are the adults. They are. But that doesn't mean that they may have to protect themselves. And even, I don't want to give anybody any ideas on that they'll say that I support Putin. All I'm saying is, as I've said for a long time, Russia is the modern day Assyria, and America, United States, is the modern day Babylon, or even more, the modern day Jerusalem, the modern day Israel. And I'm talking about the biblical thing. God used Assyria to destroy Israel because of according to the story. I'm just talking biblical stories. I'm not saying this is all historically accurate. I'm just talking from the biblical aspect of it. God used Assyria. It's not a righteous country, but used it to destroy Israel, to put it in captivity. And Russia will be used the same way against the United States because of our corruption, evil, and criminal conduct. Cause and effect, or God, take your pick. It's there. And right now, I would suspect that with this leak, the Russians will, and especially with Russia now sitting as the head of the UN Security Council, I suspect that something's going to happen. Not that they have any respect for the UN anymore. The UN wouldn't go along with investigating the Nord Stream terrorist attack. They wouldn't do it. So even though Russia's sitting at the head of the National Security Council there in the UN, I really don't know if they'd be able to pull anything off. But somehow or another, just like this situation with taking the evidence on the Nord Stream there, they're going to take this Pentagon leak. And I don't think we've seen all of it yet. I think there's going to be something else coming out. And again, I don't know who's ultimately behind it, but this kid did not have the access to do this. maybe the clearance, although I doubt that. I had a TS-SCI. I had one of those, but I didn't get it until I think I was a major when I finally got my TS-SCI. Prior to that, I had secret and even a TS, but I didn't get the SCI until right before I think I was promoted to lieutenant colonel, I believe. You know, and even if you have a TS-SCI, and as Colonel Schaefer pointed out on Judge Napolitano today, there's still the question of access, the need to know. Just because you have it doesn't mean you have access to the information, especially considering tactical or even strategic compared to briefings to the National Command Authority, the Joint Staff, and the Pentagon. What? No way. Tony Schaefer said it took, as a second lieutenant, he had a secret clearance. That's how I remember mine. First lieutenant, I think I was still a secret. Maybe even as a captain, I think I was still at secret. I don't think I got my top secret clearance until after my after my officer advance course. I think I got my top secret then, but I didn't get my top secret SCI until I was ready to go from major to lieutenant colonel, right in there. So there are too many holes in this thing. Also, there's a CIA paper, apparently, according to Larry McDonald. I have not actually seen this yet. There's apparently a CIA document in this leak that would not be given to the Department of Defense, that it would be an internal document of the CIA. The only place, according to Larry McDonald, who actually worked there, and Larry McDonald's prior intelligence, prior CIA analyst, according to him, and I think even Colonel Schaefer kind of mentioned this particular CIA document is an internal CIA document that the DOD wouldn't have had, that this leaker would not have ever seen. However, it does point to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who would have been able to bring all of this together and then leak it. And I'm not saying the DNI did it, but obviously she needs to find a new job. She doesn't know her job, or she doesn't have control of her situation, or something else is going on here. So that's why I say this looks like it's from the White House. Somebody in the White House is doing this and I just can't quite see it as being a way to give Biden a soft landing over this Ukraine thing. I just can't see it like that, like a lot of these guys are saying. That makes absolutely no sense to me. So the bottom line on this video is we have now, basically without making a full declaration of war against Russia through Congress, which is the required way before we even do what Biden has done, he can't even send troops into Ukraine like that. He can do certain things under authorizations for military force, certain things, but then he has to keep Congress notified about it. Well, they don't obey their own laws. We all know that. They're all criminals, lawless, degenerate beasts. Well, you want a clean house, and who's going to do it? They're all chicken shits, or they're complicit. There are a few that speak up. Gee, Marjorie Taylor Greene just said, hey, this shows that the Biden administration is criminal. But the Democrats aren't. That's one thing about the Democrats that is probably, I guess, laudatory, if you want to call it that. That is, they don't break ranks. Even if they know they're wrong, they're not going to break ranks. The Republicans, as Stephen Coughlin of Unconstrained Analytics has said, and I've talked about for a long time, the Republicans are the Democrats' defeat mechanism. Defeat mechanism meaning they're used to cancel us out. The Republicans don't represent us, morality, or the Constitution. They're liars, except for maybe a handful of them. So we've opened up the door for Russia to say that they need to take action to defend themselves, and it's endangered every single American. And if they weren't involved in the attacks on our infrastructure, our food processing plants, our transportation, et cetera, if they weren't, and I don't think they were, I think it was people that the U.S. brought in, particularly our IC and our crazy people in the White House and in the DHS. If the Russians weren't doing it, they have every reason to now. And they could take down the United States in a day. Oh, yes, they can. In a day. Sounds reminiscent of Revelation, doesn't it? That Babylon will burn in a day. Jesse of BP Earthwatch talks about that all the time. So heads up. Watch, yeah, take it down in an hour. I'm sorry, you're right. In an hour. It does say in an hour. All right, so there's some problems that are really at the forefront here. And our government will not correct its course. It's evil to the core, as I've said. Stephen Coughlin doesn't like me saying that. He wrote me once and said, "Man, don't keep saying that the government's evil, man. You're going to be on their radar." Hell, I've been on their radar for 30 years. If I change my tune now, they probably really wonder what's going on. All right, one last thing, and I'll be going. There was a situation that happened in Farmington, Utah, about a week ago, I think it was. It may have been in the last part of March. A young constitutionalist was driving his car in Farmington, Utah, and he didn't have a registration tag on his vehicle because he's using the right to travel, and he doesn't have a driver's license. So he's what they like to call a constitutionalist or a sovereign citizen. And it's really interesting to me when I see cops saying, "Are you a constitutionalist, one of those constitutional guys?" Well, you're supposed to be Mr. Cop. You were supposed to give an oath to serve and protect and defend the Constitution, and yet you're going to call somebody that exercises their rights a constitutionalist? How dare you, you goon! So this kid, I think he was 22, 23 years old, was pulled over because he didn't have a registration. Okay. That's a decision he made to take that chance. Try to argue it in court, I understand. The officers, I saw the video, but I'm not certain of all the details, so I can't say with any absolute certainty that what happened next was justified or not. But I will say this. He was pulled over for no registration, didn't have a driver's license, was told to exit his car, which he refused to do. They forced their way into the car, and apparently, of course, being a constitutionalist in Utah, you're permitted to carry a gun in your car as self-protection. In Utah, it's also a constitutional carry state. You don't need to have a concealed weapons permit. You can carry your gun. There's some restrictions, but you can have a concealed weapon on your person. And even before that happened, you could carry a gun in a car, which apparently he did. I was trying to see in those videos whether or not his hand was ever on the gun. I could never verify that. Apparently the gun was on the floor. I'm not certain about that, but the point is he apparently did not have it in his hand. He was no threat. But the cop that opened the door and was trying to grab him and pull him out yelled, "Gun, gun!" And every cop on scene apparently fired into that car, killing that kid. All they had to do was issue him a citation for no registration and no driver's license. But oh no, because he's a sovereign citizen, he wants to exercise his rights. The cops tagged him as a criminal because of the way he was trying to exercise his God-given rights. That's who we're up against. You're going to support the blue? I have friends that are cops. I was one. Frankly, I don't know any of my friends that are cops that would do this kind of bullshit. But there are a lot of cops, the majority of them now, that'll just do what they're told. And if they come up to somebody who wants to exercise their rights, they don't have any problem executing them. So, as a result of this, there is a situation in Farmington tomorrow. Just so you know, Farmington, Utah. Uh, I understand that Ammon Bundy, who was from Bundy Ranch, if you remember him, has put this together. I really don't know. I'm just letting you know about the situation. He's put out a call for people to come to Farmington, to the post office in Farmington, and drive through the streets in protest to what this has been all about. Am I going to go? I can't. I have a very, very important prior engagement that I will not break, not even for this. I've done a lot of stuff out there in the open, you know, talking directly to these criminals in government. And as legal man says, it really doesn't do any good. The only thing they understand is force. And that's why I've long said that if the American people and the states can't stand up against what's happening and change course, the United States will be destroyed if by no other way than cause and effect. And Russia and China might be the ones to do it. Certainly starting to look that way. So if you're in the area and you want to go to Farmington and help in the demonstration, I just put that information out there so that you know what happened. Again, I wasn't there. I can tell you, if I could get one of my friends who was on the police department with me, who saw me in action, I had plenty of times where people had weapons, even pointed at me, and I didn't shoot them. But now it's shoot first and ask questions later. Officer safety is so much more important than the safety of that individual that they're investigating. Yeah, I consider us to be a nation of cowards, and the people in blue right now are some of the worst. Look what look what the officers in blue are doing in France to their people. And the stupid cops don't even realize they're going to lose their pensions too. Or maybe they've been guaranteed, well, if you go out there and you beat these citizens up and maybe even kill a few of them, we'll make sure you get your money. You're going to believe those assholes in the French government that they're going to take care of you, you silly cops in France? You should be siding with the people, you dumb nuts. Officers are scared to death nowadays? Well, I wonder why. I just told you how I handled situations back when I was a cop. And yeah, things have changed a little bit. But there's a thing that I learned back then that still should apply today, and unfortunately it doesn't. It's called the use of force continuum. Like the situation in Farmington, if that kid did not have his hand on his weapon and they shot him, that's homicide. Oh, I felt threatened. See, they've made it too broad. And I could explain some situations on that to further clarify it, but the point is, they could have drawn their weapons and said, put the gun down, if he even had it in his hand. I don't think he did. At least I couldn't see it, okay? Just being honest, I couldn't see it. But from what I can tell, he did not. He had a pamphlet, probably his constitutional driver's license, in his hand. So they didn't pull their weapons and say, come out with your hands up, keep your hands where we can see them. No, they just opened fire on him because the first guy said gun, gun. And I'm not blaming the other officers, by the way, who may have started shooting. That first officer that cried gun, he should be locked up for the rest of his life. I gotta go. I'm late. Y'all take care. Out for now.